Welcome to We're on ECMO, an educational series for the ECMO community. My guest today is Jonathan Goldstone, ECMO coordinator and lead ECMO specialist at Sharp Memorial Hospital, where they have a robust ECPR program that's doing some great things. And so he's joining me today to talk about ECPR and their program there. Thanks, Jonathan, for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
I wanted to start off and just see if you tell us a little bit about your program and its relationship with ECPR.
Sure. So we are a community hospital here in San Diego, California. We have been doing ECMO since our first case was back in 1986, quite a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
And we since then have just been growing and trying to do better. Our first ECPR case for out-of-hospital cardiac arrest, ECMO, was back in 2010 at the hands of our pioneer ED physicians here, Zach Shiner and Joe Belezo.
Okay.
And ever since 2010, we've just been growing the program, honing the program, and working to just create a better ECPR program and save more lives.
Awesome. I know a lot of people may have heard about the work that Dr. Shiner and you guys are accomplishing in the field of ECPR there. It's all been pretty amazing. And can you tell us a little bit about how this works? From being dispatched to call from EMS to choosing a hospital to bring the patient to, and then deciding if it should be, cannulated for ECMO. How does that process work for you all?
Awesome. Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of the work that we've done here, we've used other hospitals and other counties kind of as a starting point. Why reinvent the wheel? So we took what Yiannopoulos and Bartos have done in Minneapolis, what UCLA, Cedars, and LA has done with their county, and said, how can we work with our county here to create a better ECPR program? Because at the end of the day, like I said, we've had an ECMO program for a long time. We have a robust ECMO program with an ECPR program. And how can we get better outcomes? So, we can work on internal criteria for patient selection, but at the end of the day, the faster you can get somebody on ECMO, the better the outcomes will be.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way to get them faster to your hospital is to work with your local EMS agencies. And that's where we created a partnership starting July 1st, 2023. So we just ended our 1-year pilot for this program. And kudos to our physicians who worked with the county and really got the ball rolling on this, and created this, we call it the San Diego Resuscitation Consortium. And there are 3 hospitals comprising this program. There's our hospital, Sharp Memorial, Sharp Grossmont, which is out in kind of the East County of San Diego. And then on the west side of San Diego, we have Scripps Memorial Hospital. So those are the 3 ECMO centers that are part of this pilot program. And we did a lot of work with EMS in building the program. And the biggest workload really came to educating all the EMS providers. There are so many different agencies and groups of EMS providers. And the biggest thing was, how do you teach them to get off scene faster, which goes against everything that they've always trained, right? Get them to the appropriate hospital. So we created an extensive algorithm that the county EMS agencies use. Just to run through that really quick, basically patient meets age criteria, 18 to 70 years old. They have a witness cardiac arrest that gets bystander CPR within 5 minutes. They have a pulseless shockable rhythm. They give them 2 shocks in the field. If they do not have a ROSC within 2 shocks, they put on a Lucas device, and they need to be within a 45-minute drive time to a ECPR receiving center. If all those criteria are met, they will actually bypass a closer hospital, and they will come to one of these ECPR receiving centers.
Okay.
So right now we've had over 85 patients be ECPR alerts from the field, where they have been scooped, transported for potential ECMO. So you don't always get ECMO because they have to meet certain criteria, which I can speak about. but that's how we've worked, and with the county, and really the collaboration between the three hospitals, like me collaborating with my peers at those other hospitals.
Yeah. That's a lot of working together. It's great that people are buying into that, for sure. What are some of the things that you and the team are noticing about that inclusion and exclusion criteria that may potentially impact patient outcomes?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've been doing ECMO ECPR since 2010, but one of the biggest changes through the years is, in the beginning it was just, let's just, someone's having a cardiac arrest, you put them on ECMO, see how it goes. It's
Hmm.
just been a roll of the dice, so to speak.
Hmm.
And as we've honed this program, we're learning what are the criteria. So the criteria I just went over, that's our EMS criteria. That's just the criteria to get them off the field and to your center for potential ECMO.
Hmm.
How do you make that decision for ECMO? And it's not an easy decision. These are decisions that need to happen split second to a patient that's getting active CPR in extremis.
Hmm.
So here, I can't speak for all the hospitals, but I can speak for our hospital, Sharp Memorial. We have a process where as soon as we hear that a patient's coming into the hospital in active CPR, we call a code ECMO. We have our entire ECMO team respond to the emergency department with the ECMO machine. We have 24/7 in-hospital ECMO specialists that respond. They're all nurses with the ICU training. We get there, we're in the ED with the team prior to the patient arrival. As soon as the patient arrives, our ED physicians access the great vessels. We run full panel ABGs prior to actually hooking up to the circuit. So that's processing while we're cannulating. And then we look at things such as pH, lactate, bicarb, end tidal CO2 monitoring. But they have to meet the criteria of what's the story behind the arrest. If they were found down and last seen 10 minutes ago, we don't even know how long they've been down for,
Hmm.
right? And one of the hardest things, I think, is validating the information we have, because you can only make a decision with the information that you actually
Right.
have.
Hmm.
And if the information is, well, we think there was bystander CPR, but there wasn't, you know, the facts matter. And that's where the blood gas analysis really comes into play in validating the quality of CPR, because we all know that not all CPR is the same quality of CPR,
Hmm.
right? So we look at the cardiac rhythm, the initial cardiac rhythm from EMS, the arrival rhythm, and what's the rhythm throughout the resuscitation.
Hmm.
You put that together with the labs and make a decision.
Gotcha.
And it's ECMO, it's ECPR. You can have all the data points perfect, the outcome might not be.
Yeah.
So it's about honing it and really collaborating with the ELSO community on what is the data, what's other people's data showing as well.
Hmm.
A recent publication from Bartos about machine learning algorithms to look at criteria was a fascinating paper that showed, the how lactate and pH come into play, as well as intermittent ROSC. These are all data points to help you make an informed decision whether to put somebody on ECMO.
Hmm. Yeah, and it sounds like, again, time is of the essence, and there's a lot to
Time is
accomplish in that time period.
absolutely. And
Absolutely.
I'll tell you what makes it a little tricky is, I mean, some of our best cases can sometimes be kind of fringe cases. We had a guy, cardiac arrest, transported 30 miles in active CPR with no intermittent ROSC, walk out of the hospital.
Yeah,
Those are the successes that drive what we do.
yeah. That's incredible. You said I guess you've had 85 uh people who've been notified as potential for this ECPR through EMS notification. Um, do you do you think do you see that number growing? Do you see that there are more potential for a lot more people out there to receive ECPR? You're talking 30 miles, and maybe up to 45 mile or is 45 minutes. So however long that,
Yeah.
you know, how many miles you can cover in 45 minutes. In San Diego, I don't know. I don't know, but you know, are there more people out there? Do you think that you see this growing?
I think so. I think, and I think you see this across the country is how, and I think UCLA did this as well. When UCLA started their program, they had a certain algorithm and criteria, and then they kind of expanded the program, so to speak, kind of took a little bit of the controls away to get more capture. But
Mm-hmm.
I think the caveat that one has to be aware of as an ECPR center, when you loosen the criteria in the field to get more patients into your program to save more lives, you have to, when you do that, you have to have a system that is able to filter in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Because as we all know, running ECMO programs, whether you do ECPR or not, there's only so many ICU beds you have. There's only so many ICU nurses that can care for these extremely resource intensive patients,
Mm-hmm.
right? I wish in a perfect world we said, let's just bring everyone, put everyone on ECMO. We'll save more lives, but
Mm-hmm.
we will cripple the hospital. We won't have beds for routine traumas and other stuff, right?
Gotcha.
So it's a balancing act that we have to do.
Yeah.
And that's where we are. I hope that kind of answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good thought. Um, and yeah, that the balance of that I'm sure is delicate, because the desire, of course, to save more lives is always there. So
Yeah.
that's
But
great.
I think that's what's unique about San Diego's program is I believe we are one of the only programs, at least that I'm aware of, where the entire San Diego County program, all three hospitals utilize emergency department physicians as our cannulators.
Okay.
This is using interventional cardiologists and CT surgeons. So we have the physicians 24/7 there ready to go, you know?
Yeah.
And I think what that's allowed us to do is allows us to capture, and the standard is get somebody on ECMO within 60 minutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, what they do in, Bartos and Yiannopoulos, I mean, interventional cardiologists, they do a fantastic job of cannulating. They can cannulate in 4 or 5 minutes, right? That's what we're striving for with our ED physicians, but that's a progress that we're making.
Right.
That's a work in progress, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as we get faster cannulation times, we don't have to wait for doctors to arrive. They're there, which
Mm-hmm.
means those minutes can go from cannulation and physician arrival, they can be put into drive times,
Mm-hmm.
right? So right now we're striving, like our initial goals are a 45-minute drive time with a 15-minute cannulation. That gives us an hour.
Mm-hmm.
But if we can get a 5-10 minute cannulation, you can go 50-minute drive time. You can increase your geography.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's great. Um, Yeah, it's just so neat to hear how that's working out with you guys, and I know that there are lots of people who are exploring different options for you know, how to do this, um, and hopefully other counties are taking notice as well, and I think they are. Um, is there another patient population that globally, you know, no one has explored as a potential cohort that can be saved by ECPR outside of the VFib pulseless VTAC cohort? You know, in your opinion, are we missing people?
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, the data has shown for the most part, but as you know, research always shows you can find kind of papers showing one way or the other.
Hmm.
Generally speaking, a shockable rhythm like VTAC or VFib has the best outcomes for ECMO. Well, best outcomes in general for
Hmm.
for regular CPR.
Hmm.
So it's the same for ECPR. They have better outcomes than a PEA, which does better than a systole,
Hmm.
right? But there's a lot of PEA patients that can do well. And I think increasing the capture to not exclude PEA, if you're able to validate the data prior to ECMO in the hospital, we might be able to save more people by capturing some of these other cases that might not have higher percentage of survival that a VTAC VFib has. But if we can just get them to the hospital for the potential for ECMO, if
Hmm.
they meet criteria, you know, we can do something about it. A lot of PEA is reversible etiology,
Hmm.
you know, but if someone's PEA from hypoxia and then it takes them 60 minutes to go on ECMO and they've been hypoxic the whole time, they don't have an advanced airway, ECMO is not going to save you,
Hmm.
right? It's not going to save the brain.
Right.
So those are the things to think about because really we use CPC scores to guide what we do. We want people to discharge post ECMO CPC 1 and 2, which is a meaningful neurologic recovery, right?
Absolutely. Um, and so you've got this long history with your hospital, 2010 first, ED ECPR kind of situation, and then this you've got a year now with this pilot program with your county. Um, you know, a lot of more experience than maybe others have in this area. What are some of the recommendations for new and existing teams looking to um, implement and start ECPR program? Any specific like considerations? I know you've mentioned, different algorithms and things throughout, but anything to consider and taking into account before, adding this aspect of ECMO?
Yeah, I think, I mean, ECPR is growing. It's becoming more, people are more aware of it. It's not just something that like the medical community talks about. It's in the news.
Hmm.
It's in the New York Times. Um, and a lot of hospitals are talking about starting ECPR programs. And my biggest kind of take home for everyone that's starting an ECPR program is you have to have an ECMO program before you have an ECPR program.
Sure.
You know, you can't just buy some ECMO machines and have an ECPR program.
Right.
It takes huge teams of people that I work with on a daily basis, from physicians to ECMO specialists to advanced practice, nurse practitioners, ICU nurses. There's a ton of work to build an ECMO program,
Hmm.
and then you can have an ECPR program.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot. You have to be able to care for these high acuity patients. Lots of training. Um, I could go on and on talking about the ECMO program, but it's like
Yeah.
first and it's the foundation.
Right.
It's the foundation.
Certainly. Yeah, I mean, at ECMO Advantage, we spend a lot of our time working on education, for these programs and high fidelity, training and simulation and helping people, get to a point where they do have high quality ECMO programs and the ability to sustain those and then add something like, this ECPR um, option. And then, of course, there's a lot of work that goes in with working with other hospitals, working with other, the counties and things, if you can get them involved. I really think that's where the major success is going to be is in that teamwork across, these multiple disciplines, but also the hospitals and the local government agencies as well.
Absolutely. And then also, as everyone knows, ECMO is not a panacea. ECMO is a bridge to something,
Hmm.
right? We've had a lot of patients, ECPR patients, that come in, code blue, right? They've been arresting for 45 minutes. They go on ECMO. They leave the hospital 3 to 4 months later post a heart kidney transplant.
Hmm.
The cannulation for ECMO is the tip of the iceberg that you can see.
Right.
It's what's under the water that that is needed to get the patient out of the hospital,
Yep.
right?
Absolutely.
And if you can't get them discharged, then what are we doing?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you joining me and sharing from your experience. The stuff that you guys are doing is amazing, and hopefully we see that in more places. One of the things that um, we say a lot at ECMO Advantage is we want to see patients not just survive but thrive, and it takes a lot of work. That ECPR may
Absolutely.
be the first step, but like you just said, there's this whole process that happens after that. And so We appreciate the work that you're doing and that you're willing to share with others and encourage it. And so if you're watching with us today and you have a question that you'd like to see answered by an extracorporeal expert, like Jonathan, please make sure you email me, Neil, Neil, at ECMOadvantage.com. Thanks again, Jonathan, for joining us, and we'll see everybody next time.
Thank you.